To celebrate 1 year of Genshin Impact, I wanted to go over mechanics that have been dropped from the game. So I asked some people to come up with an iceberg of forgotten mechanics. Not all of the mechanics on this are forgotten per se, but they may seem to have been dropped from the game, or at the very least are underutilized at the time that this video is created. If you're watching this from the future, there's a good chance that some of these have seen further implementation. Bomb dropping. In a domain with Amber during an early quest, you can drop bombs on hilly churls while gliding through the domain. Not only is this never utilized in another domain, the concept of dropping anything from a gliding position has never been reused in events, character kits, or otherwise. Carpet bombing random goons on the ground is a pretty cool mechanic, and I can imagine obstacle courses with hilly archers being really fun in a domain. Unfortunately, we only got a taste of what this could have been like. Water spikes. There are these spikes in the water that make it so you can't swim. It was used in the Kaya domain to teach players about ice bridges and then never used again. I don't think it has that much potential outside of the tutorial, but it is really strange for a developer to put time and effort into creating something for their game only to ditch the concept immediately. I guess it's par for the course with Genshin though, but it will always be in the game's code, so if they can ever think of a reason to use it, they can reuse it. The next one is the boar traps. If you get a boar to walk into one, then you get 6 raw meat instead of 2, but you only get like 2 traps during this quest, and you can never get any more ever, which feels kind of insane because it seems like something you could craft more of. I remember in the early days there was even a rumor that you could craft more of these because it just seemed like something that would obviously be true. I would like to be able to create more, but admittedly I would probably never use them. Spiderwebs. Yeah, so these showed up a few times in Liyue, but haven't made any appearance in Dragonspine or Inazuma. Basically, the spiderwebs can be destroyed after a few hits. These have had multiple appearances, and even respawn on one place in the map, but they might never be used again, especially considering the new area of Inazuma has aesthetic spiderwebs, but no interactive spiderwebs, at least from what I've seen so far. It's still very new as of when I'm recording. Skins. Kind of a joke entry, but also not really. Everyone expected character skins out of Genshin, partially because the glider skin change button looked like a wardrobe button. I think it's clear that they weren't really intended to be a part of the game at launch, but rather that they would introduce them slowly over a longer period of time. But now that 1 year has gone by, we've only seen 2 skins. October is also a time when a lot of games will add themed skins for Halloween, yet no announcements have been made as of the time I'm recording this, and there aren't even any leaks, so where are the skins? It's not like they take that long to create, given that it's just a reskin of the character, although it does seem as though a lot of these will be integrated into the story, as the first 2 skins had a very big deal made out of them, with the whole Midsummer Island adventure event being interwoven with the reason for introducing the skins to the game. On-rail shooter. When you're fighting Dvalin for the first time, the game becomes an on-rail shooter. There hasn't been any plot reason to do this again, but it's weird that they haven't been able to use this mechanic again. It's not replayable and has never been used in any events. Dendro. Alright, so this is a joke entry because Dendro is taking so long to implement. I'm not sure exactly how the rumor started, but people thought that Dendro was coming with a Chasm update in 1.6, probably because that's around the time that Baizo's model was first leaked. Instead, we got the Wind Chase Festival, among other things, before the story shifted to Inazuma. Some people hypothesize that Dendro got delayed, but it is coming, and in fact, it's almost here, probably. Purifying the Harp. You click to purify the harp. It's not really a mechanic, I think more of a graphic, but it's another one of those things that doesn't get used again, nor do you ever do anything like it. It is an example of MiHoYo just going a little bit above and beyond for a simple graphic that didn't need to exist, and people thought that because it had so much attention put into it, that you would use this concept again. The Adventurer's Handbook. So when you begin the game, the Adventurer's Handbook has tasks for you to complete for rewards. It mostly just functions as a way for new players to be introduced and reminded of the things that you should be doing, like leveling up your artifacts and characters. A lot of people assumed that the book would get new pages in future updates, but it hasn't. And the assumption that it would get future pages isn't really unreasonable because the book ends at chapter 9 before it actually caps on the requirements for leveling up characters or weapons, among other things. not to mention that new mechanics like fishing could easily be incorporated into later pages to encourage players to check out the new content. Character Quest Part 1. So character quests always say Part 1 on them, even though Zhongli I think is the only character to have gotten a Part 2. Part 1 implies that they were meant to get expansions, even though it's more than likely most characters will never get sequels to their character quests, especially now that Hangouts have sort of taken over their purpose. Some characters will probably have Part 2s and maybe even Part 3s, but the majority of characters will only ever have one. Combat gadgets. So most gadgets can't be used in combat, but during the Midsummer Island Adventure event, players could craft bombs to throw at hilly churls. These were extremely powerful, and while obviously these were meant to be temporary, there aren't any gadgets meant to be used in combat now. I wouldn't expect a permanent gadget to be anywhere near as strong as the craftable bombs, but I also wonder if we're ever going to get a permanent combat gadget. Gadgets are already disabled in domains in the Spiral Abyss, so having a combat gadget wouldn't really have an impact on the more challenging parts of the game if they were implemented anyway. Glowing Visions. Unreconciled Stars was one of the first major events in Genshin. It was released in 4 parts, and each part had a story section to go along with it. Not only did it prominently feature Mona and Fischl, but it was also the introductory quests for Fischl and Scaramouche. A lot of people thought that events like this would rerun alongside expansions to the event's story, but that has yet to be seen. Specifically during this event, visions glow in response to meteorites that you have to seek out. Nothing has since utilized visions glowing in the same fashion. They were used as sort of a radar, where if you were close to a meteorite, it would glow stronger, and if you were further, it wouldn't glow at all. Archons aren't supposed to have visions. This isn't really a mechanic, but it ties into mechanics. In the lore, the Archons don't have visions. Venti and Zhongli created fake visions so that they can use their powers in public without giving away their identity. As mentioned earlier, in the Unreconciled Stars event, characters' visions would glow, but not Venti's because it was supposed to be fake. But this isn't clear given that in Venti and Zhongli's models, they look exactly how a vision should look. And now that Raiden is out, she also has a vision despite having no reason to fake one. Their visions also have the same visual indicator when you switch to them when their burst is ready, showing the sigil of their element sort of pop out, despite the fact that, again, they're supposed to be fake. Elemental Clots. This was part of the Elemental Crucible, one of the first limited time events in Genshin. I would call it the first playable event because the only limited events prior to this one were the first test run, a login event, and a forum event. It lasted from October 12th to October 19th, which is only a single week. Basically, you could go up to this area in Mondstadt and choose to start the challenge in either single player or co-op, and it was a lot of fun in co-op. I really enjoyed the event. It required resin to claim the rewards, which is something that we haven't really seen since. In the event, you would have to kill waves of enemies, and elemental clots would spawn around randomly. Your goal was to collect as many of them as possible and return them to the center. What made the mechanic particularly interesting was that if you were holding a hydroclot, you could get up to 2 more hydroclots before needing to deposit them, but by picking up a clot of any other element, it would delete your hydroclots. So sometimes you would pick up an element and then ditch it because you notice a quick row of a different element. Needless to say, this mechanic, or even any concept like it, hasn't been seen in the game since. The Parametric Transformer. This is another joke entry, referring to the fact that the Parametric Transformer item can only be used once a week, and players often forget about it. If you don't have the Parametric Transformer, what you do is basically fill it up with 150 farmable items, and it converts it to items that would otherwise require resin to receive. Petting animals. So this never made it into the game, but in a developer Q&A before Genshin came out, it was confirmed that you would be able to pet friendly animals, but obviously that didn't make it into the game. I'm not sure if this was just the social media person misinterpreting that you could interact with friendly animals, or if it was actually intended and it just hasn't been implemented or was dropped entirely. Temporarily removing characters from your roster. So in 1.0 to 1.3 or so, characters would leave your roster when you sent them out on expeditions. They could still be used in the Spiral Abyss, but you couldn't switch to them in domains or in the overworld. This was removed because players just didn't really like it. Still, no other gameplay mechanic has disabled your ability to use certain characters in the overworld or in domains since then. it's not really a forgotten mechanic so much as it is an intentionally avoided one. That being said, it does have a little bit of a weird leftover, because you aren't allowed to use the Traveler on expeditions, even though the reason for this implementation was so that you didn't lose access to your Traveler on the overworld. Now that characters on expeditions don't leave your party, there's not really a reason why the Traveler can't be sent on expeditions like any other character. And that's the list. Let me know if there's anything you can think of that should have made it. And as it turns out, 100% of my viewers aren't subscribed. If you want to hit the subscribe button, I would much appreciate it, seeing as though this is my first video and I had a lot of fun making it, and I'd love to make another. I have a lot of footage of glitches that I've recorded, so I was thinking that I would probably start making videos about all the glitches that I've seen in Genshin, because there are just so many of them, and I personally have recordings of at least a dozen or so that I've never gotten out to the world, so look forward to that.